Dealing with date time in C# applications can catch many developers off guard simply because time is a hidden dependency. Calling DateTime.Now directly in domain code is potentially bad programming practice. For one, date time is tied to a specific time zone, the locale. And then the second reason is that it's impossible to test. It gives you the instant time to the millisecond or the nanosecond. And once this time has moved on, it's no longer valid in tests. So the best solution has been for developers to create their own abstraction, treating time like any other dependency by injecting it into the consumer. So you would either inject it via a service or you could pass it into the method. But .NET 8 introduced the TimeProvider abstract class, which can act as the abstraction service. So now, is this built-in provider good enough? Can developers do away with just writing their own service and then instead just use this .NET provider? The short answer is no. The built-in provider alone is still not good enough for a couple of reasons. Number one, there's some common universal functionality missing, such as converting to Unix timestamps. And then when it comes to testing, it's still very difficult to mock this provider, and you actually have to install a separate NuGet package, Microsoft.extensions.timeprovider.testing. And then the final immediate limitation is that it's a little bit difficult to simulate passing of time, freezing or moving on to a different time. It's very difficult to do this with a built-in provider. These issues can very easily be resolved with the next update or next releases. But what is always going to be difficult is to just deal with specific cases that are for a given business domain. So for example, a business might have its own version of what the working hours are. So after or outside of these working hours, orders don't get processed and support cases don't get handled. Another scenario might be if we have functionality or a method that wants to know what the previous business day would have been. So for instance, Saturday, Sunday, and up to maybe Monday before the office reopens again. If we want to know what the previous business day was, that should ideally be Friday. But this Friday, what happens if it's a public holiday, or what happens in a different country if that same public holiday was actually a working day? So in essence, dealing with time for specific business cases can become a whole set of logic which is better placed in a custom wrapper or a time service. So my implementation is to first create an interface, DateTime service, and I'm being intentional with the naming and trying hard to not name any of the custom code time provider or anything linked to that sort of naming. And this is to avoid confusion with the built-in .NET version. So the most basic functionality this contract or interface is going to implement is just to get the time in locale time or UTC. Then there are also going to be methods that convert between datetime, Unix timestamps. The second set of methods are going to start drifting into being more specific for a domain. For example, getting the end of the business day or getting a previous working day. Once the contract or interface is defined, the concrete implementation should be relatively straightforward. It can even use the built-in .NET provider. So the custom service is overall much better implementation, as it is very easily mockable in tests, and also you can start adding your own extra functionality. So conclusion is you shouldn't be using the .NET time provider directly, but instead have your own custom wrapper around it.